Hi, Anine. I just want to take you through some things I've noticed at the ending of chapter 5. So please take notes as you look at this. The first thing I want to take you through is the descriptions of the atmosphere in the barn in the lead up to Curly's wife's body being discovered. And I just want to draw your attention to how Steinbeck creates a really poignant atmosphere here. So it starts here. The sun streaks were high on the wall by now, signifying that the sun was getting towards setting, and the light was growing soft in the barns. This softness, it's no longer the harshness of day, the harshness of the heat of day. She's half covered with hay, Curly's wife, and it's very quiet. And Steinbeck describes the quiet of the afternoon was on the ranch. Even the clang of the pitched shoes, even the voices of the men in the game seemed to grow more quiet. And you've got this sense of things sort of coming to an end, which is quite fitting for Curly's wife. The silent, as in things that are coming to an end, is obviously the day. The sun is getting towards setting. The silence is almost reverent. I think it's almost respectful, and it's certainly quite exposing. Um, it's a moment where there isn't the usual hubbub of activity going on, and you wonder, where are the men? Are they about to discover this at any moment? Um, Here we go. So the air in the barn was dusky in advance of the outside day, meaning that it's almost like dusk already inside the barn. And you've got this pigeon flying in and circling and flying out, which just draws attention through that little movement. That little movement there draws attention to how nothing else is moving. It's a very still moment. And he flies out again, perhaps you could think, because it's a kind of a place that instinctively even animals don't want to be. Maybe if it was not a pigeon, if it were a dove flying in and then out, you could almost maybe say it's the writer's trying to interpret that as a symbol of a soul, maybe Curly's wife's soul moving, but pigeon maybe not, although he could be trying to do the same thing. You got the dog, or rather the bitch, as in the female dog, coming back in with her lean and long. She is lean and long with heavy hanging dugs, which are what she would feed her pups with. And she comes towards where Curly's wife is lying, but whimpers and cringes and runs away to jump among the puppies, protective or sheltering or comforting. The hair rose along her spine as well. I should just point that out. We've got in this very still moment here, it's almost like actually this kind of stillness makes you think of kind of the shock, like how shock sometimes paralyses you. Because the reader is shocked about what's happened. So we've just got a moment here to catch our breath. And this little movement here of the bird, and then she whimpers and runs back to her puppies. We can see that, there's life coming into the barn. Curly's wife is going to be discovered. Again, we're reminded that she's got a half colouring of yellow hay, so the inevitability of her discovery is just building here. We know she's going to be found. And then quite a sympathetic, forgiving discovery here by John Steinbeck. The meanness and the plannings and the discontent and the ache for attention were all gone from her face. She was pretty and simple, and her face was sweet and young. She's kind of been given a reprieve here. She's kind of been given a bit of a pardon, maybe. We actually see that it's the worries of the world that have caused her to be so mean and perhaps to even taint her beauty. When you take those away, she's pretty and simple. It's kind of redemptive here, slightly. Steinbeck is being generous towards this character. We've got this horrible irony. She seems to be sleeping lightly, and we think, oh no, we know that she's not. And it's almost like an idyllic moment, though. Her hair was spread behind her, her lips were parted, almost like a kind of sleeping beauty moment. And then just perfectly, Steinbeck includes this paragraph here, which I think captures all of what he's doing really well. As happens sometimes, a moment settled and hovered and remained for much more than a moment, and sound stopped and movement stopped for much, much more than a moment. And we do have this kind of snapshot while which is sort of frozen in time. The action of the farm has paused to just expose what's going on here, make us reflect on the severity of what's happened, the weight of what's happened, and to allow Steinbeck to give this kind of not quite redemption really, but this kind of pardon to Curly's wife. And then Steinbeck actually, it's almost like you've stepped out of the novel, because Steinbeck then, and you're kind of looking at it reflexively, and Steinbeck says, then gradually time awakened again and moved sluggishly on. The horses stamped on the other side of the feeding racks, and the halter chains clinked. Outside, the men's voices became louder and clearer. And suddenly we get, a return to the norms, although we know that the normal is about to be just very disrupted. The men's voices can be heard. The horses are stamping around again. Time is moving on, and with the movement of time comes the inevitable discovery of Curly's wife and judgment of Lenny. There will be judgment, there will be punishment. We just know this instinctively as the reader. So the kind of escape that we had from that in these descriptions of the light and the air coming in and the animals moving, we had a bit of a break from the tension and the kind of inevitable movement towards a judgment and an ending. We had a bit of a break from it, but we know now it's starting again, and we're sort of bracing ourselves for what's to come next.